Hey, what's up guys, welcome to another video. In today's video I'm gonna talk about this book here, The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. I just reread it, and yeah, it's been almost 10 years since I last read it, so this was definitely a new experience. It was almost like reading a totally new book, to be honest. And I've also had the experiences he's pointing at in the book before reading this for the second time. So that definitely made a huge difference, and I think it would be quite valuable for you guys in terms of, when I read it 10 years ago, I had like no idea what he pointed at with the book, right? I didn't quite understand exactly what he was pointing at, right? But now when I read it, I've already felt what it was that he was pointing at. So I think that will be a very interesting perspective. And yeah, I guess I would also just talk about, in general, the main or the key lessons from the book and my own take on it. And yeah, I think that will kind of be the main points of the video. So yeah, I wanted to start out with comparing reading it now versus 10 years ago. So 10 years ago, I was in a very, improving everything, right? Optimizing everything kind of phase. And I heard a lot about the book, and when I read it, I definitely got a lot of value from it. But then again, right, he even says it in his book, right? He's trying to point you to an experience of presence or being or the unmanifested, as he calls it. And the thing with that is, if you never experienced it, you have no idea what it is. It's it's almost like never having eaten a steak, like one of the best steaks in the world, and you've never eaten it, and you're trying to explain it to someone, right? Or sex, right? If you never had sex and you try to explain it to someone, like, no matter how much you explain it, you're only pointing them to what you're trying to describe it, but they will never get it once before they experience it for themselves, right? So that was me 10 years ago. I've never had the experience, so I just didn't know what he was talking about, but it seemed very true, right? I felt the soul of him when he wrote the book, right? And even though you never eaten the best steak or had sex before, just from the experience of other people explaining it, you could understand how you get a little hint of what it is, right? But yeah, so that was like 10 years ago. And when I read it now, I've had the experience. I felt what he talked about with the presence or being or the unmanifested. And because of that, the book made so much more sense. I understood more all of the nuances and all of the details, and all the things he was trying to point out with the book. So I just got a lot more out of the book. And yeah, after reading it now, it felt like a completely different book. And yeah, it's an amazing book, incredible book. But I still would recommend it for people that haven't had the experience he's talking about in the book, because he kind of explains how to get there. So if, for me, even though I read it 10 years ago, like, I didn't take it that seriously. I didn't know what he was talking about, so I didn't know that that work was that important. But yeah, after having my experience, I can now understand how important that was. And I would argue it's the most important work, right? More than anything, really. So, yeah. But I will try to kind of explain what he's pointing at as best as I can, so that you could get kind of a taste of it. But I also wanted to talk about the main points of this book, or the key lessons, right? And yeah, I think, yeah, I'll try to, like, I have to think about who I'm talking to, right? If I'm talking to the normal people and using like a lot of difficult spiritual language, it's just gonna turn them off. But I guess I'll try to explain it to both people, both the non-spiritual and spiritual people. But yeah, I guess the main thing is, right, he argues that the main problem of basically anyone is that they are not in the now. And what that means in practice, right? You have things like complaining, right? By complaining, you're kind of rejecting whatever is happening, which takes you out of presence, and it also makes it less likely that you can solve whatever you're complaining about, right? You're complaining, you have like dwelling on the past, right? Which, also takes you out of the presence. Dwelling on the past and, planning for the future, like excessive planning, like not like planning is like never planning is not, how do I say it? It's not that planning is bad, but definitely most of us is excessively planning or excessively thinking about the future, which creates suffering, right? Like, you worry a lot, you're thinking what if, of things that actually never happens. And the thing is that every time you do that, you take yourself out of the present moment. But by actually staying in the present moment, staying as present as possible, as much as possible, is what will give you the highest likelihood of actually solving whatever you're worrying about in the future, right? Yeah, and another typical one is like, typical with like goals, like, if then I'll be happy, right? So yeah, so he brings in like a lot of the normal things we struggle with in our day-to-day, and how essentially all of it is a problem of escaping the now, right? But by staying in the now, you kind of solve all of it. And we'll try to get a bit deeper into that in this video. And yeah, before going into like things you can do to get more in the presence, right, I also want to touch upon the benefits of more practical benefits of being more present, right? So basically all of the problems I just listed, you will solve them, right? Worrying about the future, dwelling about the past, you decrease the unnecessary suffering that you're creating, right? So you would just be more present. And because you're more present, you will just come up with better ideas and be more creative. And you will also be more in flow. And you can say that flow is kind of presence too, right? Like when you're during sports or making art or music or anything. But what most people don't think about is that flow doesn't necessarily only happen during those activities. Like you can be in flow all day. Like you can be in flow just walking or just sitting or just working or whatever. The potential to be in flow is there all the time, right? It's just that you are escaping the present moment, right? When you're present, you're you're in flow basically. So you can imagine that, right? The flow you have in sports, you can imagine that you would be in that state most of your days if you're able to stay present. And there are other things too, like aging slower, that he mentions in the book, and stronger immune system. And it's kind of linked to the psychological burden of thinking about the past and the future and stress, etc., right? It's like suffering, so it creates stress. Yeah, I guess that's the most important. Maybe I can bring in another thing that, so all the things I mentioned was, it's very relatable, right? But there is a deeper truth here, you can say, that might be not so relatable to everyone, but it's definitely a truth that I want to mention anyways. And it's that if you stay present enough and if you practice it enough, and if you get in touch, like once you do it, it will come to a point, or it will lead you to experiences where suddenly everything will just almost stop, right? You will not identify with any of your thoughts or any of your emotions, and it feels like everything just stops, right? And there's a stillness and peace and bliss that you probably never experienced before in your life. And in that state, you realize that you are actually not any of your thoughts, and you're not your emotions, you're not your thoughts, you're not your body, you're not any of that, right? And what's left is like, what is left, right? What's left is just the essence of you. And how he explains it in the book is that it's just the awareness, right? And this is where it gets hard to explain it if you never experienced it, right? But you can also think of things like, what is the you that have always been there, right? When you think of yourself when you were, I don't know, 6 years old, right? There's something in there that is the exact same as you now. And it's not your body, it's not your thoughts, right? It's not your emotions. But there's something there that has always been the same and will always be the same. And that's true. But I think the way of explaining it, it kind of it undersells what actually happens here, right? Because when you say, oh, I'm just the awareness, right? If you never have the experience, you're like, okay, I'm just the awareness. It doesn't sound that cool or big, right? Or what's so significant about that? But I'll try to explain it. Like, when everything is, when you realize that you're not your thoughts, you're not your emotions, you're not your body, there will come first a stillness, and then you will have unconditional love for everyone. And I would say that is one of the main things of why it's so significant. Because once you realize that you are not any of your thoughts, emotions, or your body, you will also realize that any other thoughts from other people or their emotions or their body is actually not them either. Right? So you can't, it's not possible to judge them or get mad at them. And all that's left is unconditional love, because you see that everyone is the same. And everyone is really just you, and you're them. And that's the significant part of it. And yeah, even though I'm trying my best to explain how it is, like, it can't compare to when you actually experience it, right? So I want to emphasize that. I'm trying my best to explain it, but it doesn't get close to the experience of it, right? But I hope I at least gave a teaser to why this probably is the most important work anyone can do. I also wanted to bring in another, cool thing or like a motivation to do this. Once you get in touch with that essence, you also realize that nothing can touch you. Right? You're not your thoughts, you're not your emotions, you're not your body. And once you get in touch with that, you realize that nothing can touch you. Like, nothing can kill you. So a lot of the fears that you have, and you can say almost most of the fears people have in today's society is related, it all connects back to the fear of death. But once you had this experience, of course you will sometimes fall back to being scared, but you will realize the truth of that. The true essence of you can't be touched and it can't be killed. It has always been there and will always be there. So yeah, I think I can leave that part there. Oh, there's actually one more thing I wanted to mention with this, to give you more motivation. once you've once you felt that essence, you'll also realize that everything you were chasing, whether that's money or business or purpose or dating the perfect man or woman, you'll realize that all of those things you were chasing, right? You were really just chasing the feeling it will give you once you achieved it, right? But once you felt the essence of your soul, you will realize that that essence is exactly that feeling once you have achieved everything. And this is crazy because now, like, once you've felt it, now you truly understand this story or this parable of the beggar that went around and begged for money, and then another guy was like, have you checked the box under that you were sitting on? And in that box he had, like, the box was full of gold, right? So everything you were chasing for, you already had. And there's a lot of sayings on this, like, you are what you're looking for, or yeah, what you seek you already have, or something like that. And I heard many of those things before, but yeah, I didn't never really truly understood it. But it's a bit of like, if you never felt it before, it's still like, doesn't mean that you have to, that you should stop chasing it. And honestly, probably not, right? I think it seems like the journey for most people will be to chase those things, and you get it, and then you realize that it doesn't give you what you were after, right? I think Jim Carrey had like a good quote on this, right? He said something that he wished everyone got rich and famous so that they could understand that it wasn't what they were looking for. But you never realize that before you actually chase the journey, right? Or chase those things and actually achieve them. That's at least the journey for most people, I think. There are definitely some people that are able to realize it without chasing it. But yeah, maybe you also, there's like a little nuance here. Like I said, that the feeling is everything you were looking for, right? And at the same time, I also said that once you achieve it, you realize that it wasn't what you were looking for. So when you achieve it, right, you get this high for a bit before you go back, right? But this high that you get, yeah, this is a bit hard to explain. But this high that you get is kind of almost like the essence of your soul, but you will feel it forever, almost. Whereas with this, once you achieve it, you feel the high, and then it goes down again, and probably crash worse than your default state, because now you're like, what the fuck? I spent 10, 20, 30 years chasing this thing I thought would make me happy, and then it didn't. But yeah. So yeah, that's kind of like a bit of a rant on, you know, the motivation to get more present. But yeah, I wanted to talk about a few, like tactics to get more to the present, right? And just want to make it very practical and easy. Yeah, the easiest thing, I'll mention a few, but so the first thing would be to feel the sensations in your body. So Eckhart talks about how the inner body is the portal to presence, and that's a bit of a fancy way to phrase it, but what he basically means is kind of just feel the sensations in your body. That sounds very simple, but it's very profound. And yeah, I know that because I actually focus on that every day, almost the entire day for months. Yeah, and that completely changed my life. But what it basically does is that usually when you walk or are social or work, your mind just goes to the past or future, right? And it either creates anxiety or worry, right? It creates unnecessary suffering. But when you put your attention to the sensations in your body, you're not thinking about the past or the future. You're putting your attention in your body or the sensations in your body. And the sensations in your body is presence, right? And yeah, usually what happens when you think too much about the future or the past, right, is that there are certain sensations that come up in your body, but your attention is not there, so you're not aware of it, right? So if sensations and emotions, right? Emotions is just sensations in your body. So if there are anger that is building up, or there's sadness that is building up, or there is fear that is building up, if you don't have your attention in your body, you will not notice it until it has built up so much that you're like, you don't even know why you're angry or sad or fearful, right? So there's a lot of things here, but that's like one of the main reasons why I think just feeling the sensations in your body is so important. There are other things like taking a deep breath, right? Most of us know this, but just taking a right, it just instantly draws you into presence, right? When you focus on the pleasure of the breath inwards and the pleasure or the sensations of the breath outwards, and focusing so intensely on it that there is no space in your head to dwell on the past or think about the future, right? Let me just check how much battery I have left. So yeah, where was I? Deep breath. Another technique is to intensely listen to the silence that is around you, almost like you're waiting for something. And when you do that, you're kind of focusing all your attention to being present, you can say. Similar to that is trying to feel the empty space between things, right? Because in order to do that, you have to focus very intensely on the sensations in your body and trying to feel the empty space. And that will also bring you more into presence. Other things are, when you realize, that your thoughts have kind of taken over and you're suddenly just dwelling on the past, right? And you can say that your ego or your thought suddenly thought about certain situations and it made you feel suddenly angry or sad or fearful, right? But this whole thing started with one thought, and then it created other thoughts, and it created a story, and it made you feel this type of way, right? It created suffering. But if you're very aware, right, if you do it in the beginning, you will probably not catch the first thought, but you will catch it like maybe later in the story, and you realize, oh, this happened, right? My mind was running and it made me feel this way, and I don't need to identify with it. Like, those stories and those thoughts are not me, right? And the better you get at it, the earlier you're able to catch, until you're able to catch the first thought, right? The thought comes and you realize immediately that, oh, there's the thought, it's trying to blah, 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 or it's not me, or something like that. And yeah. And it's the same with emotions, right? Suddenly you can have certain emotions, and a lot of people identify with their emotions. They think that they are their emotions, right? But just like with thoughts, you're not your emotions. Like, your body has it, right? You of course you want to feel it and express it, but realize that you are not your emotions. Yeah. I think that's kind of like the main techniques. I think I want to talk about, or end the video with one thing from the book. That is a bit, it is a bit deep, but I think it's very cool. And I want to talk about, I want to explain it first with silence and space and sounds, as he does in the book, right? So with silence and sounds, right, you don't really know silence until there are sounds, right? Once there are sounds, then you will realize the silence that was there. But if there never is any sound, you won't realize the silence. And the same for space and objects. You don't realize that there are any space if there are not any objects. Once there is an object there, then you will realize the space. And that is exactly the same with enlightenment and forgetting and remembering. If you don't forget yourself, you won't realize the enlightenment. Only through forgetting who you are, only through identifying with your thoughts and emotions for most of your life, and then remember who you are, only then will you realize the enlightenment. So he has a very cool way of saying it. I have it here. It's through the world and through the human experience, forgetting who you are, that God can know himself. And I think I'll end the video here. Thank you guys for watching. See you in the next video.